So I'm doing a movie review of Grave of the Fireflies. Spoiler warning. I don't really care. Hopefully you don't watch this movie. So yeah, as you can tell, didn't really like it. Now I've heard good things about this movie. A lot of good things. But I always heard it was very depressing. So I always backed away because I'm like, man, life is stressful enough as is. I don't need to deal with some sad topics. But then I finally sat down and watched it today. Right? Let me tell you, this did not feel anything at all for these characters. Whatsoever. The sister, yes, I felt sorry for. But the characters, from the very beginning, I was just kept waiting, like, alright, when's it gonna get sad? When you first see the mother, it gets like, whoa, like, alright, now it's getting sad, now it's gonna get depressing. But it never does. Alright? And the thing is, you want to feel sorry for these guys. You really do. But you can't. You know why? Because all this, guys, the whole problem this guy has, all of it can be solved if he says 2 words. I'm sorry. That's all he had to do. And he would have been, his sister and his own life would have been saved if he had just swallowed his pride. Now, when I was watching this movie, I thought, alright, maybe he's 8. I'm thinking, alright, this kid's got to be like 8 years old. Little kid, they don't really know any better. But even then, it was like, alright, there comes a point where you're so hungry that you're just be like, alright, I need food. Let me just go back to my aunt. But he doesn't. And I looked it up. This kid's actually 14 years old. Okay? And at that age, there is no excuse for this whatsoever. Now, the topic comes up that his aunt was a little cruel towards him. But granted, the kid should have, at his age, the kid should have realized that, hey, we're at war. It's tough. We got to ration the system. But the kid doesn't do anything. I mean, the aunt even mentions, hey, the least you could do is help fight off the fires. And the kid doesn't even do that. He runs to the shelter, and he's spoiled. The simple fact is he's spoiled. And I don't understand how anyone can feel sympathy for someone who's basically an idiot. Alright? Now, granted, yes, I understand the whole topic is very depressing in and of itself. But when I first had the idea, when I first, was hearing about this movie, this is how I imagined it. I imagined it, the kid's family died, he has no one whatsoever, and he's just living on his own because, hey, that happens a lot in the real world. And I'm sure that happened in Japan. And it wouldn't have been that difficult to make a story like that and would have been a lot more believable. Alright? Now, I understand this story was apparently based on this guy's real life story, and that he feels responsible for his sister's death because she died of malnutrition, which, who knows? But it doesn't make the excuse. Like, it still does not excuse you for making a bad story, because it really was a really bad story. And honestly, yeah, I understand it was a sad story, but granted, it's not particularly interesting, alright? Nor is it very sympathetic to the reader. There's plenty of other stories, and I wanted to mention, and granted it's about dogs, but I want to compare this movie to The Plague Dogs, alright? Now, I don't know if you guys have seen this movie, but it's about these 2 dogs who escape from lab testing. They test, science lab tests or whatever. The 2 dogs escaped. They're in Scotland, I believe. They're in Scotland, alright? Now, these guys, from the very beginning, you feel sorry for them. Because it was just, with Grave of the Fireflies, you'll be saying to yourself throughout the movie, just go say sorry to your aunt. That's what you'll be saying for the whole movie. Okay? Where for the Plague Dogs, it's just like, oh, why even live? That movie was depressing from start to finish. Okay? And the movie did it right. Because not only is the story a lot more realistic, even though it's about dogs, the story is a lot more realistic, and you can definitely compare it to a lot of situations humans find themselves in. Okay? But the story with Grave of the Fire was completely unrealistic. The kid had plenty of help throughout the movie. It was suggested by people throughout the movie to go back to his aunt. And then it's like, how can you feel any sympathy for a character who does this, who does not, who basically swallows his pride and is responsible for the death of his sister. I don't even care about his death, but the death of his sister. Now I'm thinking about maybe deeper meanings behind it, and maybe because at one point the kid gets like cannot accept Japan's defeat, but they kind of make it believe that it's because of his father, because his father died. But then I just got to thinking, all right, maybe this movie had something more to say, saying that a lot of Japanese could not accept defeat, and they chose death over the acceptance that the emperor has fallen. But that seems such a stretch to me, to be honest. Given the topic, it seems the topic would be very prevalent. War and what it does to orphans. And I just couldn't. You could probably make the connection, but that seems too much of a stretch for me. Now, going back to the plague dogs. Okay, throughout that movie, they're just trying to get a break. That's all. They just basically want to be left alone. All right, just like Sato wanted to be left alone. Okay, but unlike Sato, who had a helping hand, granted, yeah, it might have been like bad from his aunt. He has to deal with the aunt's abuse. But with the plague dogs, the two dogs, they were chased from the very beginning. Okay? They couldn't get a break. They just wanted to be left alone, and they didn't know any better. Okay? Now, they had a scene in Plague Dogs where they keep killing sheep because, they gotta eat. So, and they get associated with, we got these rabid dogs in there, and they're radiological, all this stuff. It's a complete mess. But all they want to do is be left alone. And they get chased from start to finish. Okay? And that is a story where you can actually feel sorry for the person. Or for the dogs, okay? And then it just gets to like... And then you realize this movie is not going to have a good ending. Right? Nothing. And throughout it, you just realize from start... Like I said, from start to finish, this movie is going to be bad. Like, going to have a sad ending. Okay? But throughout Grave of the Fireflies, everything could have been avoided. Okay? Now, it's just... There's just so many stories that have done it better. Okay? Now, granted, like he said, the author based it off his own real life. But listen, alright? If I want to look at real life, I can just look outside my window. Alright? And have a far interesting story. Alright? Because granted, at the end of the day, I want to be entertained. But I cannot feel any sympathy. And granted, why would anyone want to watch a spoiled brat? There's plenty of those out in the world. So, definitely overhyped movie that honestly probably only gets so much credit because it covers a depressing topic. And I'll say it, Japanese people, the Japanese, they try to make American look bad. I'm sorry. Because they did mention it. I watched Roger Ebert's, whatever his name is, review, and he said they did not mention the Americans once in the movie, but they did. The very first scene, they mentioned the Americans. And it's just like, oh yeah, we're to blame. This, when the kid's dying, they mentioned the Americans are coming any day now. Right when the kid dies. Okay? If that's not the most subtle reference to look what the Americans did to us, I don't know what is. Okay? Now, yes, granted, it sucks. But war is it. And there's Japanese side, there's American side, there's Chinese, there's every side. Okay? But the movie did a poor portrayal of the Japanese situation. Poor portrayal. There would have been far better examples. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, it would have been a perfect. But I know that's been covered to death. But there's just so many ways it could have been handled better, and it just was not. Alright? Studio Ghibli, you really let me down. And I honestly think that's the only reason this movie gets as much credit, is because it's from that studio. So yes. You will be disappointed if you have any steps. If you've ever been hurt, if you don't live in a bubble, and you've seen poverty, you've seen destruction, any time in your life, you will not feel any sympathy for these guys. And if you do, and if you do feel sorry, yes, good for you. You still have an ounce of humanity left in you. So, big disappointment. I suggest you don't watch it. Thank you.